Okay, so I've been thinking about this a lot recently, and it's the topic of giving yourself enough time to think. Because in this day and age, where we have such easy access to stimulation, no one really just sits in their bed and thinks. No one sits at their desk and thinks. No one just is alone and thinks. Everyone, they've got either a computer, a mobile phone, and they'll start scrolling. They'll enter like social media. They'll do anything but stay unstimulated because we're so obsessed with dopamine. In this video, I want to talk about how, in my opinion, meditation, or just people don't like the term meditation, they see it as a label, but just giving yourself the time to think is probably the best habit you could do for yourself. Sorry, I've written down notes here, so I'm just looking at them. The first thing I want to say is there's a reason why meditating and journaling's another type of giving yourself the time to think it, except you're just writing it down instead of thinking. I feel like sometimes it can be easier to write stuff down just instead of thinking. It gives you more clarity. Another way of doing this is also recording yourself, which is what I'm doing. I want to try out a different form of meditation, I guess, or just thinking. And there's a reason why meditation and journaling has so many, like, it's always associated with ideas of like calmness and healing, because that's what it does. Most people have never tried, and if they have tried, they've tried it maybe once and given up. But it is genuinely, it's amazing. The longer you do it for, the better. Obviously, I can't sit here and say I do it every day for an hour, because that's very unrealistic. As much as I'd love to be able to do it, I'm also a human, so I can't. I don't. I should. And I want to link this idea to a couple of books that I've read. The first one being Fahrenheit 451. And in this book, they have something called seashells, which is basically like a little AirPod that people put in their ears, and they get given like information. I think it's something about news the whole time, but the point is, let's say you're just walking down the street, you're walking to the shops, yeah? If you don't have any music in, if you don't have anything in your ears, you just have yourself, you have your thoughts, and you think. Like, that's your time to think. Because people don't really scroll like TikTok or Instagram Reels as they're walking down the road. If you do, you're cooked. And these seashells, they were a constant flow of information. I think it was in this book, it was a way of the government like installing more propaganda, and it was a way of controlling your mind through like taking away your thought time, your time to think, and constantly feeding in more information they wanted you to believe. And I see the modern day equivalent as like people like listening with AirPods in to maybe news channels, or music in general. I mean, music as itself, it's not a bad. It's not bad. I like music. It can bring your spirits high when other things can't. Music is a very it's very powerful. But let's say you're walking to the shops. Do you really need music in? A lot of the times it's no, and you're just taking away more time to think. The more time you have for yourself to think, the better. Because think of it like this: as you live, you gain more experiences day to day, small experiences. Let's say, like, even we can count like a social interaction as an experience, and more of these build up, and it's like a funnel, right? And as you think, you're putting more things down the funnel. But let's say you don't think, then the funnel's going to get clogged. It's going to overflow, and that's how we get like stressed out. We get overwhelmed because we don't think enough. In 1984, another book, it's very popular. The idea is around something called a telescreen. So in everyone's houses or apartments, it was like a TV, but you didn't really get a choice of the channel. They'd just always be playing what they wanted to play, what the government wanted to play. It was more of a way of like installing propaganda, but it also takes away like your freedom of thought, because when you are told something over and over and over again, you kind of just start to believe it. Also, when it's on the whole time, you can't think your own thoughts. You're just thinking about what they're telling you. So it's another form of taking away your time to think, your time. So now I want to talk about like a small meditating exercise you can do. There's so many different ways to meditate. It's such an old practice, I guess. So the way I meditate, the way I like to do it usually, I like to think of like a feeling in my body. So it might be like a tingle in my elbow. The easiest thing to do, which I usually do, is just I think about my breathing. It's what most people do. It's the thing you usually hear, the stereotypical breathe in, breathe out, but you don't. That's not the point of meditation. People think it's some sort of breathing exercise, but it's a way of managing your mind and getting calmer through filtering out these thoughts, like I was saying before. So you think of this feeling. So let's say I start thinking of my breathing, and then naturally, as a human, you're going to lose focus and you're going to start thinking of something else. So let's say I'm thinking of some sort of social interaction I had earlier. Once I realize I'm thinking of that social interaction from earlier, I'm going to be like, okay, I've lost my focus. I'm going to start thinking about my breathing again. And I can just set a timer and do this for 10 minutes. And then once the timer goes off, because I don't want to be autistically looking at this timer, because that takes your focus away from your breathing, you're focused on the time. Once the timer goes off, you're done, and you can do it the next day. You don't have to do it every single day, because that's not how habits are built. Habits are built by just starting to do something you didn't do. So let's say you meditate once a week rather than no times a week for 10 minutes. You're already doing better than you were before. Just compare yourself to your previous self, not someone else in this scenario. If that doesn't feel comfortable for you and you just want to start off easier, I think also just sometimes I literally just lay in my bed and I just think. And that's 20 more minutes of just thinking than I would have gotten before. I would have been doom scrolling Instagram, gaining no value. But instead, I've just spent 20 minutes filtering through my thoughts and emptying that funnel I was talking about before. Another way of I don't know if this counts as meditation, but I like to do it, and it kind of links to this, as journaling. So I don't do this every day. I just do it when I feel like there's a lot going on in my mind and I need to ease my mind and empty that funnel. I'll just journal, and it just gives me so much clarity. I used to make like some recordings just for myself to look at, where I'd just talk to the camera. It gets you better at speaking to the camera. I mean, I haven't done this for years, so that's why I might not seem amazing at this, but it's another way of just expressing your thoughts, and you probably wouldn't have done that before without this. Another question I wanted to ask was, this links back to before, why is the term like shower thoughts a thing? It's because when you're in the shower, that's when you don't have your phone on you, so you tend to have the best thoughts of the day. And that's because if you actually think about it, that's like your only thoughts that you've come up with yourself that day, because the rest of them have just been based off whatever you were doing before, which might have been study, which might have been Instagram Reels or something, but it wasn't directly from you. That's why people use the term shower thoughts, because it's their time to think. But if you give yourself more time to think, then you can just call them thoughts. And the more of these thoughts you have, the better. Another example of this is like, let's say you can't sleep because sometimes you go to bed and all of a sudden your mind starts racing, it's going in circles, you're thinking about so much all at once. It's because once you actually put your phone down ready to sleep, you start thinking, because it's your first time all day that you've given yourself the time to think. But it's just unfortunate because you've given yourself this time to think right before you want to stop thinking and go to bed. So if you just give yourself time to think during the day, then these thoughts will be less overwhelming at night, and you can get a good night's sleep and generally lead a healthier life. Yeah, I think that's all I had to say. Before I made this video, I wrote a few notes down on paper. So that's why I keep looking down. I've written stuff like the books I wanted to mention, the exercises I wanted to mention. And yeah, I want to start just coming up with topics, talking about my topics and my thoughts about these topics, and making them into videos and see where I go from here. So thank you for watching, and goodbye.